Welcome to Delta History, where the fog of war clears and the truth comes alive. In the blistering heat of Ukraine's summer, the battlefield once again roared to life. This was not the clash of a few scattered units or a border skirmish gone wrong. It was the full might of a nation preparing for what it believed would be a decisive strike. Russian commanders, emboldened by months of planning and intelligence reports suggesting Ukraine's defenses were overstretched, launched the largest coordinated assault of the year. Their goal was clear: break through the southern corridor, force a Ukrainian retreat, and deliver a strategic shock that would echo far beyond the front lines. Columns of T-72 and T-80 tanks rolled forward, supported by waves of BMP infantry vehicles, rocket artillery, and battalions of conscripts and special forces. Precision-guided cruise missiles struck key Ukrainian positions. Russian drones filled the skies, scanning for weak points. This wasn't just another attack. It was a gamble for dominance, a campaign meant to tilt the entire war. But waiting for them in silence, hidden just beyond the haze of drone surveillance and artillery smoke, was something Moscow hadn't anticipated. Something forged not in theory, but in decades of brutal modern combat: the M1 Abrams main battle tank. These were not ordinary steel beasts. These were machines born from American warfare doctrines, hardened in Iraq, and now reborn on Ukrainian soil. Crewed by elite Ukrainian operators and reinforced with NATO doctrine, they represented a fusion of Western technology and Eastern resilience. What happened next would not only shock Russian generals, it would capture the attention of the world, rewriting the rules of mechanized warfare in the 21st century. Russia's grand plan. It all began in early July. Russian military analysts, interpreting satellite images and drone reconnaissance, concluded that Ukrainian armored forces along the Zaporizhzhia front had thinned. Commanders believed Ukraine had overextended itself, shifting heavy units to the east and northeast. In Moscow's war rooms, it seemed like the perfect window. If Russia could move fast, breach the lines, and reclaim territory before Western reinforcements were fully operational, it could regain the strategic initiative. Dozens of battalion tactical groups were formed, a deadly combination of older Soviet-era tanks, newer T-90s, self-propelled artillery, air defense systems, and tens of thousands of ground troops. Supplies were stockpiled, mobile hospitals were set up, and the electronic warfare units prepared to jam communications, blind drones, and disorient any counterstrike. Then came the strikes. Kaliber missiles and Iskander short-range ballistic missiles targeted Ukrainian logistics hubs, ammunition depots, and fuel convoys. Russian Air Force sorties increased. All signs pointed to one thing: a large-scale offensive was imminent. But what Russian intelligence missed was that Kyiv already knew. Thanks to intercepted communications, Western satellite intelligence, and deep surveillance drone networks, Ukraine had seen this coming. And they weren't preparing to run. They were preparing to fight smart and hit back hard. The Abrams Arrive. Unseen by the public eye, weeks before the offensive, the first batch of American-made M1 Abrams tanks had arrived on Ukrainian soil. Transported discreetly and protected by NATO logistical corridors, the tanks were distributed to select units trained in NATO-style maneuver warfare. These Abrams were more than just machines. They were symbols of trust, of Western resolve, and of Ukraine's transformation into a modern fighting force. Each tank was equipped with composite armor, thermal imaging optics, and computerized fire control systems capable of hitting targets accurately from over 3 kilometers. Ukrainian crews selected for Abrams operations had undergone accelerated, high-intensity training under American advisors in undisclosed locations. There were no shortcuts. They had to master everything from rapid maneuvering to combined arms coordination. By the end of June, the Abrams were quietly deployed across sectors most vulnerable to breakthrough, hull down in concealed positions, engines shut off, and every gunner watching the horizon. They waited like silent predators, surrounded by infantry, covered by drones, and backed by artillery. The trap was set. The battle ignites. Just before sunrise, it began. Russian Grad rockets and tubed artillery unleashed a thunderous barrage across Ukrainian positions. The air was thick with smoke, debris, and confusion. Under this chaos, Russian armored columns began their advance. T-80s and BMPs, supported by drone overwatch, pushed into Ukrainian defensive belts with alarming speed. At first, it looked like a repeat of earlier Russian successes. Ukrainian forward units appeared to be in retreat, falling back to secondary lines. Russian drone footage showed trenches being abandoned and roads cleared. Commanders reported progress. Morale rose, but the withdrawals were calculated feints. Ukrainian forces were not fleeing. They were luring the enemy in. As Russian tanks crossed into what appeared to be undefended ground, a storm of Abrams fire erupted. Concealed in tree lines and dug-in fire positions, the Abrams gunners used thermal sights to pick out targets with clinical precision. The first Russian tanks didn't even realize they were under attack until they exploded in a cloud of fire, steel, and smoke. Each Abrams round was GPS-guided, each shot deliberate. Some tanks exploded instantly, others were disabled and left burning on the road. Russian infantry tried to dismount, only to be caught in crossfire or picked off by drones hovering above. In less than 15 minutes, over a dozen Russian armored vehicles were in flames. The battlefield, once roaring with confidence, descended into chaos. One Ukrainian commander calmly radioed in, "They walked right into it. We're not stopping." The turning point. By midday, the Russian offensive had all but stalled. What began as a multi-pronged advance now looked like a tactical disaster. Ukrainian artillery began pounding Russian rear positions, using HIMARS to destroy supply convoys and field HQs. Russian radios crackled with static as drone jamming units cut off communications. At the same time, waves of Ukrainian FPV drones hunted Russian personnel hiding behind vehicles or bunkers. Drone footage captured precise grenade drops into open hatches or trenches, leaving no safe space for retreating forces. Abrams tanks didn't stay idle. With infantry support, they began pushing forward, reclaiming ground, breaching enemy flanks, and crushing any remaining resistance. RPGs bounced off their armor. Russian T-72s fired wildly and missed. Some Russian crews abandoned their vehicles, running for cover. A panicked brigade commander was heard screaming over a compromised channel, "They're everywhere! We're blind! Pull back! Now!" That's when the rout began. Aftermath and losses. As night fell, the battlefield was littered with twisted steel and smoldering wreckage. Ukrainian drones flew low, scanning for survivors. Footage from FPV drones showed dozens of destroyed Russian vehicles, collapsed trenches, and abandoned gear. Satellite photos released days later confirmed the scale. Over 60 armored vehicles destroyed, command posts obliterated, and entire units scattered. Ukrainian crews, exhausted but proud, stood next to their Abrams tanks, which now bore the scorched marks of battle. These machines had held the line. They had won the day. Still, victory came at a cost. Several Ukrainian vehicles were hit. Some soldiers paid with their lives, but the scale of success was undeniable. A masterclass in modern warfare, where speed, coordination, and superior equipment met disciplined strategy. For Russia, it was a humiliation. Their most ambitious summer assault was over in a matter of hours, stopped cold by defenders who were not only prepared, but technologically superior and tactically smarter. Global reactions. The battle sent shockwaves far beyond the front. In Washington, officials applauded Ukraine's mastery of Western equipment. NATO analysts began citing the engagement as a benchmark for modern combined arms operations. Military journals dissected the battle, noting how a smaller, smarter force could dismantle a larger army with speed, precision, and real-time intelligence. In Moscow, the silence was deafening. Official statements were vague, casualty numbers were buried. Independent sources reported confusion, disillusionment, and criticism inside the Russian command structure. Across Ukraine, the mood was triumphant. Social media was flooded with videos. Abrams tanks bursting through smoke, soldiers waving flags from atop their turrets, and drone strikes filmed like cinematic sequences. The people saw not just a victory, but a symbol of resistance and hope. The summer that broke Russia. Now, as the dust settles and the wreckage is counted, one truth remains. This summer belonged to Ukraine. What Russia believed would be a victorious campaign became a catastrophic defeat. Their largest offensive of the season was torn apart not just by firepower, but by strategy, training, and will. The M1 Abrams did not merely stop an attack, they shattered a belief, the outdated assumption that numbers alone win wars. In this new era of warfare, quality, agility, and coordination reign supreme. You've been watching Delta History, where we reveal the truth behind modern conflict, battle by battle. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share to support future deep dives into the world's most intense military moments.